Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome back to Seed to Plate channel. My name is Brooke and today we're talking about everything I'm growing in the spring and summer, well, early summer of 2024. Normally I would have this video done back in December, but we got a puppy and you know, it's been chaos. So I have literally all my seeds laid out in front of me, but first I think it's really important to talk about garden goals, which I have on my phone because, you know, the life of a millennial. Okay, so my garden goals are wedding flowers. That's gonna be a whole section in this video. I'm getting married next December. I'm gonna try and grow as many of my own wedding flowers as I can and dry them. So that'll be a process that you'll see played out on this channel. So that is my first garden goal, is wedding flowers. My second one is actually less tomatoes. So I grew somewhat like 30 varieties of tomatoes last year and it was just too much. I never thought I would see the day where there were too many tomatoes in my garden, but alas, there were too many tomatoes in my garden. So we'll talk more about that during the tomato section. Another goal of mine is tomatillos. My tomatillos were not good last year. One of the reasons my tomatillos were not good last year was because they were sitting in a place where they did not get enough sun and they were too wet. Like their feet were too wet, their roots were too wet. So that was one of the reasons my tomatillos didn't go well. So I really want to focus on tomatillos. We eat a lot of tacos here in this house, especially breakfast tacos, and I would love to have some summer fresh salsa verde to put on my morning breakfast taco. So my goal with peppers this year is to plant less and eat more. I did not do a good job at eating our peppers last year. It was kind of just a hectic year for us in general. So, you know, one of my other goals overall is just to eat more fresh stuff out of the garden in the spring and summer of this year. The fall and winter garden that we have going on right now has done so phenomenal, and we have not purchased a vegetable at the grocery store, and I think we're coming into week 7. So that has really inspired me to do that with our spring and summer garden as much as we can. Another one is summer and fall squash, which is very hard around here because of squash vine borer. So I got a taste of success last year, which I'll talk about during the squash section. But just squash in general, I love squash and I really want to try and hone in some kind of method of growing it. And then my very last goal is seasonal rotation. So we're coming up on onion and potato season here in Central Texas. I'm technically zone 9A now, but I also don't really think garden zones mean anything. So I am literally this afternoon gonna go buy onion sets and we're gonna have a whole bed of just onions. So whereas last year I had every single bed available, I have almost 300 square feet of growing space, I had almost every single bed available to plant tomatoes, peppers, all this stuff. But this year, because of the timing of when we're in this house and in this backyard, I'll be able to plant potatoes, I'll be able to plant onions, I planted garlic, all of that stuff comes out in May, and we'll put in summer stuff like okra and watermelon and sweet potatoes. And so I want us to be eating fresh out of the garden and having something constantly going. And that's a really big goal of mine as well. So those are all my 2024 garden goals. Now we're gonna go section by section. There's a lot. So we're actually gonna start with tomatoes because tomatoes are my favorite. So we'll start with slicer tomatoes. I made myself pick 5 varieties of slicer tomatoes. Last year I think I grew 25. So this was a little hard, but it was good because I'm excited for them. So one of them is Dr. Weitsch's Yellow. I've been hearing about this one for years. I have never tasted it. I tried to grow it last year. Unfortunately, we were gone on a vacation when the one tomato that came off the plant was ready. So one of my friends got it who was taking care of the garden. But Dr. Weitsch's Yellow is going to be my slicer that I've never tried before. I only let myself do one variety that I had never tried before, and the rest of them are kind of like Old Faithfuls. Speaking of Old Faithful, Paul Robeson. This is my absolute favorite slicer tomato, hands down. You can't tell me otherwise. The other purple tomato that I don't have a packet of yet, I need to find one, is Cherokee Purple. Those are my fiance's Cam absolute favorite tomatoes. That man eats sandwiches every day for lunch and they are his favorite tomato to put on a sandwich. Ponderosa Pink, I grew this last year for the first time and really, really loved it. They are fat tomatoes. I mean, they're massive and they're really tasty. They're not super acidic. They're a little on the lighter side. really good. And then Valencia. This is one I grew last year too, and I only got a couple of them, which was a bummer, but the couple I got were really, really good. So I'm hoping that with less plants and just like a little more TLC, I'll get more of these because they're really good, smaller, like saladette type tomato. So along a similar vein, I only let myself pick 5 varieties of cherry tomatoes. So this dog needs everything all the time. One of them are these large red cherry tomatoes, this little packet I've been growing tomatoes out of for like 5 years. It's a packet from Amazon from when I first started gardening, but man, they are just workhorses, and they're a really nice red cherry that aren't crazy acidic. And then white cherry tomatoes, these were super tasty last year. Not really acidic, really on the sweet side. Yellow pear tomatoes, another favorite of mine. I tend to lean towards the yellow cherries. Sunrise bumblebee, my one sunrise bumblebee plant didn't make it last year, and I was so sad. So I've grown these for years, and I'm really excited to have them again this year. And then the one packet I don't have are sun golds. I grew sun golds for the first time last year. Oh my goodness, the flavor, y'all. The sun golds were just so good, and the plant grew like a freaking weed. It was awesome. So moving on to sauce tomatoes. So I can a lot of tomatoes. It's one of my favorite things to do. It always makes me feel just like super duper warm and fuzzy on the inside. So last year I tried a bunch of different types of sauce tomato, and I definitely learned a few lessons. One of them being just because it's a determinate tomato, which means it gets to a determined size and it sets all its fruit at one time, which is ideal for saucing. Just because it's a determinate tomato does not mean it's a good saucing tomato. I grew some like more globe, like saladette tomatoes that just had a lot of water, and it made the saucing process just a lot longer. So I've narrowed it down to just Roma varieties. So these are just Roma varieties. This one, again, another packet I got from Amazon. They have been absolute workhorses for me for years. They always put off so many tomatoes. Another just very standard Roma tomato variety. They're just 2 separate kinds of seeds, and I like the genetics of both, so I grow both. Amish paste, these were also absolute workhorses for me last year. Virginia Select, phenomenal. Hungarian Italian paste, I say these are definitely the biggest Roma tomatoes that I got. They were, I mean, absolutely massive. It was wild. And then the Alini Gold. So I got to make last year, I grew these tomatoes. They were a little interesting to grow. They don't grow like other tomatoes that I've grown. They made this most incredible sauce that I'm gonna use soon with some gnocchi. And the Alini Gold tomatoes made this like really bright, sweet, bright orange sauce that I called sunshine sauce. And so I'm growing those again, and they were just, the flavor is not like any other tomato I've ever tasted, especially when it comes down to a sauce. So we're growing those again. And on note on tomatoes, so I figured out last year, I kind of reverse engineered some math, which I'm not gonna share here because I don't want anybody to tell me it's wrong. You know, honesty. And really, when I reverse engineered that math, I figured out I needed to grow 30 plants for me and my fiance to have a canned tomato product 1 time per week for the time where we're not eating fresh tomatoes. So that's probably like, we only eat fresh tomatoes probably like 8 weeks out of the year. So for the other however many 10 months, that was kind of how I calculated that. And so far it stayed true. So while 30 determinate tomato plants probably seems insane, it's actually kept up with what we eat in this house with just 2 people. So moving on from tomatoes, we'll move into peppers. Now I wanted to grow less plants. That doesn't mean less variety. Peppers do really well here. And so really, I don't need more than 1 hatch green chili plant for what I use it for. So hatch green chilies are on the docket. Serrano peppers for making salsa, Anaheims also for salsa, jalapenos, you guessed it, salsa. And then some sweet peppers are some Jimmy Nardellos. I grew these last year. I don't feel like they got quite healthy enough, so I want to try and grow them again, but they're a really nice sweet pepper. And then shishito peppers, which I will have multiple plants of because they're so good. They're so good. I feel like I need to put them in a better spot this year. I feel like they weren't quite in the right spot, but they are truly so delicious. And then in terms of bell peppers, I always have luck with this King of the North pepper. I usually always get bell peppers from this. I know it's called King of the North. It's actually made for northern climates, but here in Central Texas, I always say we have a long time between freezes, but a short growing season, because between our last frost in March and our first 100-degree day where things really start struggling, we really only have like 90 days. And then it doesn't really get tolerable for plants again from like, I don't know, mid-July to probably mid-September. So we have like a full 60-day growing window where things are like not great. So yeah, King of the North is a good bell pepper that like makes it within that 90 days. And then Orange Bell and California Wonder. These are pretty standard peppers that I've had do really well in our climate on years where we've had a more mild spring. Like 2021, I think, was like the best pepper year ever. It's honestly ridiculous. So moving into what I'm calling my others category, tomatoes and peppers are really like my biggest categories. But one thing that I want to try to do better this year are melons. So I found out, somehow I didn't know, my fiance, who I've been with for 5 years, loves cantaloupe. Didn't know that. So I'm growing a couple different kinds of cantaloupe, Hale's Best and Honey Rock. And then Yellow Fleshed Moon and Stars watermelon. I grew this last year. I really liked the flavor. I don't think that the watermelon plant got quite enough like love, to be honest with you. So I really want to try again. And this will actually extend into the summer as well in terms of growing. And then eggplant, one thing I did last year with eggplant was I grew way too many. So what I figured out was this long purple eggplant tends to grow the best for us. It's a little too hot here to develop those really big like Black Beauty eggplants. And these are really good for just 2 people because we're not really wasting any. We can just pick one eggplant, use it in our dinner, and move on with our lives. In terms of tomatillos, I'm only growing 2 types, and the Rio Grande Verde Tomatillo is the first one, and then the Cisneros Grande Tomatillo is the second one. So I'm gonna try 2 types of tomatillos. I already know where I'm gonna put them. It's very strategic. So we will see how it does. I crushed tomatillos a few years ago. I think it was in 2021, but have not been able to do well with them since. So I'm really hoping for more success. I'm reducing my cucumbers. I tried a lot of varieties last year, but just not a lot of them do well in our heat. The one that does is the Silver Slicer. So I will be planting more of these. And then this is the Be It Alpha cucumber. So I'm pretty sure this is kind of a hybrid. They only have 65 days to maturity. So if I started a couple weeks ahead of time, we should be able to get plenty of cucumbers before it gets too hot. With cucumbers, what'll happen is it will actually get too hot, and then it gets really bitter. Like I've literally spit out cucumber before because it's just been super bitter and gross. So cucumbers can be a little dicey here to grow, but because it's a shorter date to maturity and it's it says heavy yielder, that usually is a good sign that you'll get plenty of cucumbers. You'll be able to eat a bunch of them before it gets too hot for them to grow. Now that's gonna be on one side of my arch trellis. On the other side of my arch trellis is I am going to be growing loofah finally. Now, I'm very excited to grow loofah. I have a lot of fond memories from my community garden. We had a lot of community garden members who would grow it. And so I really would love to grow it and use it as like actual loofah. The only thing I'm a little nervous about is the vines get out of control, like absolutely out of control. However, that may work in my favor because these will grow throughout the hottest months of the summer. So by the time we're taking the cucumbers off the one side, the loofah can really like keep going down the other side and kind of just take over, and it's totally fine. All right, let's talk about squash. Now, I told you I had a little bit of success. Now, in this summer, I'm going to be trying to grow winter squash, which I still have yet to figure out how I'm gonna do that, but I am gonna figure it out. Now, this last year, I planted my squash kind of in the middle of squash vine borer season. Now, squash vine borers are the worst bug ever. They're terrible. And we actually did get a few squash. Now, I think what I did to trick the squash vine borer is I had like this row of tomatoes, and tomatoes have a pretty significant scent. And then on the outside of the tomatoes, I had marigolds, which also have a very specific scent. And the marigolds were really bright yellow. So from what I heard on the social medias, which, like, you know, who knows if it's right or not. Squash vine borer find the yellow flowers based on smell and based on yellow. So I intermixed it with super smelly marigolds and tomatoes, and then with yellow marigolds. So I don't know if that worked, but we did get a decent amount of squash, to be honest with you. And it was amazing. Like, we probably got, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 zucchini, which sounds, if you are in a place in the world where you can like grow zucchini without batting an eye, you probably think 5 or 6 sounds crazy. That's a big deal here. So we're gonna try and grow summer squash. We're gonna see what happens. I might cover it until it gets big enough. I have yet to decide. So the gray zucchini is what I grew last year that did really well. Just a regular yellow straight neck squash. And then this squash I actually forgot about. This is supposed to do really, really well with squash vine borer because of the variety, and it's called Tatum squash. So I'm gonna try this one again. I tried it a couple of years ago, didn't really work out. So we're gonna try again and see what happens. So those are all my vegetables. Those are all my vegetables for the spring and summer. Here in Central Texas, we can't really grow spring brassicas. We can't really grow, you can do green beans, but there's not that many. Those are really like fall winter things. I'm looking outside because they're outside of my garden right now as I film this video in January. So those are the things we're gonna be growing. Now, I've said this the last few years, but it's definitely gonna be the year of the flower. So why don't we go ahead and start with my wedding flowers, and we will go from there. So these are all the flowers I plan on growing and drying, okay? So the plan is to grow these, and again, I'm looking where they're gonna get planted, along my back fence between my blackberry plants. It will give them some shade, and I think it'll just be a good spot where they're gonna get a lot of sun. So I will be drying these for the wedding, and the wedding is in December. If you're gonna leave a comment about me growing my own wedding flowers, please be kind, because it's been really hard to feel like I've been supported in this journey. Okay, thanks. So Hot Biscuits Amaranth, which I think just has a funny name. And I really like, you'll get kind of a feel for the color palette. It's honestly just a lot of freaking color. I love color. So Hot Biscuits Amaranth, Crasspidia, drumstick flower. It's these little like yellow balls. Terracotta Celosia. Renyan Celosia. King size orange straw flower. Velvet Curtains Amaranth, and Frosted Explosion Grass. So that's gonna be all the dried flowers. Okay, so the fresh flower that I'll be growing for my wedding are sunflowers. Why sunflowers, you ask? Well, because they're my favorite, and I actually have a sunflower tattooed on my back. So with sunflowers, you're probably like, Brooke, your wedding's in December, you're crazy. And I hear you and I understand. However, I live in Texas, so it's still warm enough to grow sunflowers. I'm actually staring at some of them in my backyard. So I did a little bit of a test this fall and winter for timing. And because the winter hours are, you know, shorter and it's colder and the sun's in a different position, I wanted to make sure I tested it. So I tested the timing in terms of planting the seed, but what I didn't realize, which seems silly now, is that all of the sunflowers I planted are all branching sunflowers. So you have branching sunflowers, which are your typical big, super tall sunflowers, and then you have cutting sunflowers, which are meant to be cut for floral arrangements. So I'm going to be retesting at least the spacing and the color palette this spring and summer with cutting sunflowers. So I'm probably still gonna end up next fall and winter before the wedding, having to do the whole like probably 10-day, 7-day, 5-day before the wedding, and then they can be vase stable for a couple days. But we'll go through every single stem sunflower that I bought, and these are all from Johnny's Seeds, and they're really, they seem like they're gonna be really great. You can plant them really close together, so I'm really excited to play with these. This is an Pro Cut Orange F1. We have a red F1. We have a Pro Cut Plum, which I did grow, and I'll put a picture over here from like the one that I grew. I'm obsessed. These are the ones I would like to carry in my wedding bouquet if I can. Then we have red and lemon bicolor, lemon F1, and then orange Excel F1. So those are all the Pro Cut sunflowers from Johnny's, and then I have a teddy bear sunflower and an Astra Gold sunflower. These are also really, really good for cutting specifically. So I'm going to attempt to do this, and I think, you know, I think what everybody's really worried about is like, what if it doesn't work out? I'm gonna know in the spring and summer if it's not gonna work out and if I need to kind of switch direction. So yeah, join along in the journey, see if it works out, we'll see. Now going back to branching sunflowers. Branching sunflowers are some of my favorites to grow, and there's like so many of them, so I'm not gonna go through all of these. Chocolat's a really, really awesome one that actually I'm growing right now. Autumn Beauty is another great one that I'll be growing. Lemon Queen, she's a standard. She's just a standard. And then Sunspot Dwarf Sunflowers. These are kind of fun because they're kind of short. They're kind of like short and fat, and they have really, really fat heads on them with like these teeny tiny petals. So I'm excited to grow those again too. And I'll probably put those more along the borders. I won't put those in my garden beds because that is valuable real estate. And honestly, sunflowers will grow anywhere. So those are wedding flowers and sunflowers. Now I'm gonna go through what I call in-garden flowers. I'm not gonna go through every single one of these because we would be here all freaking day, but I'll go through like nasturtium. Honestly, there's not that many varieties of nasturtium, and I have just a few, but I always put nasturtiums in my beds. I always put calendula in my bed along with snapdragons. But then the ones I wanna focus on are marigolds, and zinnia. So I'll go through the new varieties that I got from Baker Creek. I literally got this package today. This one is called Sunfire Tangerine. We have Bambino marigolds, Orange Flame, Colossus Red Gold Bicolor, Chica Flame, and Safari Scarlet. I do have a few other varieties that I will be growing, but I put marigolds in my garden everywhere. They have a litany of benefits that I really truly believe in, and if you're gonna plant a garden, I would highly recommend you interweave flowers. Honestly, my goal this year is to plant enough marigolds where I don't have to buy any from the store, but I usually end up buying some from the store because I want them everywhere. They're great for avoiding root knot nematode. They're really good at avoiding pests. The bees love them. All around amazing flower to put in your garden. Now the next thing is zinnias, and I haven't fully decided if I want to put these like in a flower bed or in my garden with my vegetables. I just haven't decided yet, but these are the new varieties that I got. I was pretty low on zinnias. I still have a few, but these were some of the ones that I thought were really fun. These are called Aztec Sunset. This is Taki's Choice Mix. They're a bunch of cactus sunflowers, which are like my favorite. These are called Macarena zinnias. Queen Lime Red, a stunning classic. And one that I have a personal sentiment towards is the Peppermint Stick. This was a packet of seeds that I bought when I had just started gardening at my community garden. It was the first flower I really ever grew myself from seed, and I just thought it was so strikingly beautiful that I wanted to get more seeds to kind of, you know, feel the nostalgia. And then the very last category of flowers, we are probably, I'm going to manifest it into existence. We are going to be turning part of our side yard into some like perennial flower, wildflower vibes. Like, we're not exactly sure what it's gonna look like yet, but I have a ton of perennial flowers that I wanna stick over there and just see how they do. Yellow coneflower being one of them. These are called 4 o'clocks. My cousin sent them to me along with some larkspur. Poppies. I have so many poppy seeds that I am like desperate to try because that was another very big, what is that puppy doing? That was a very big nostalgia for me at the community garden. They have the most beautiful array of poppies. Anyways, moving on. Bread seed poppy, Iceland poppy, Shirley poppy, which is mother of pearl, amazing gray poppy, Bells of Ireland. Don't know how this is gonna go. There's only a couple seeds in there, but might as well try. Rainbow mixed California poppies, purple echinacea, Shasta daisies. I don't think these delphiniums are gonna do well, but you know, we're gonna try. Black-eyed Susan and butterfly flower. So these are all flowers that are perennial and will reseed themselves for the next season. So I really would like over in this part of the yard for it to be something that's just kind of pretty and kind of adds like that kind of wildflower native feel to it. Well, thanks so much for watching, guys. I would love to know what you're excited about growing down in the comment section, and we will have more videos coming up in 2024. Thanks so much for watching. Happy gardening, and we'll see you next time.